Brett Ridgway, Chief Business Officer, here to talk to you about 2016 election planning, following up on our conversations from the last board meeting. And so I have to apologize, first of all, that obviously I've handed you out a hard copy of something that wasn't able to be available in time for the packet, but because what you saw in the packet was the exact same presentation as what we had last time. There's some value to that to make sure that we were all on the same page. But I did have the meeting that I had that was able to provide some additional flavor to this. I didn't have until 2 days ago on Tuesday. And so I wanted to be able to bring some of that to you, since this was just as a discussion item for tonight as well. Given that, we still should reset or level set on where some of the things we talked about last time. And from page 8 of that original packet, we had kind of what we put down as the suggested preliminary strategy in these bullet points here, talking about how we have kind of a combination of things that we want to accomplish here. And because they have a mix of capital and operational items, we can accomplish those only through a new mill levy override as a single source of revenue for these things. And through that process, have a new embedded COP or certificate of participation issue to accomplish a couple of larger ticket items. We intend that MLO issue would accomplish a four-pronged approach. I'll show you that slide next until we can revisit what the four-pronged approach is. And again, the intention would be to have no increase in the overall tax rate. Just here earlier this evening, we approved the mill rates for this year. We assess taxes at the end of a calendar year for that calendar year to the property owners of record at the end of that calendar year. Those taxes are collected in the spring of the following year. So what we approved tonight is technically a 2015 tax rate to be collected in 2016. And the bond levy rate that if you recall, that we put in there was 10.159 mils. That is actually a reduction from what we have assessed for several years now, which was 11.212 mils. So that was a good benefit of the refinancing that we did earlier, actually late summer, early fall. And so again, what we would propose is to say, let's launch off of that 10 mil rate and see if we can, if the community would be interested in maintaining that level of investment going forward as those bonds finish up and mature. So, and lastly, again, we want to achieve some effectiveness and efficiency with innovation. And so I'm really excited to talk about what the ideas we have here tonight, because it is different from what I think anyone else has done before. So revisiting what the four-pronged approach was that we talked about as we went through some of the priorities and the lessons and the observations that we had in the last year since the November 2014 election. Number one priority being an equalization, a facility equalization of the coordinated high schools. We have things that we'd observed then that are still true today. Vista Ridge not having a second gym, Dauphin High School not having a flexible space, things like that. Number two priority would be to have some investments in current facilities, refurbishments, remodeling, things like that in our current facilities. Number three, I think there's an opportunity and a good reason to continue to grow the 2014 3A investment priorities. We had the four priorities that we had there. I think specifically we would want to consider teacher compensation in that as well. And then fourth, to add some space, elementary space being where we're still seeing our biggest difficulties in terms of capacity issues in the district. So the new information I have tonight is just to walk through what the idea is. And again, I'm calling this still an idea because it's not a proposal yet until you direct me to make a proposal of this. So up here in the upper right, we kind of have what the idea is, again, that we want to accomplish many things without a tax increase. And assume that we have the 10.159 mils that we just talked about in the bond mill rate as a kind of a baseline to work with. Then let's see what we could do with that. So if we apply that 10.159 mils to the current assessed value, that generates a revenue stream, an annual revenue stream of just over $7.6 million. And again, when we're talking about mill levies here, we have to talk about the revenue stream first, because that's what we're really doing. We're not talking about debt capacity, because this is not a debt instrument. This is a revenue instrument that we use to obtain some financing with. So 7.69 million would be the annual revenue stream based on this, again, this mill rate. So What we're kind of working towards and proposing now is a fairly sophisticated program that would have three pieces to it. One being a 25-year instrument that we would use to do the longer lived asset construction that we're talking about. A second being a 10-year instrument that we could use for shorter term investments in the current facilities. And then the third being the annual operating resource for something to expand on the 2014 3A investment. So the projects here, and I think the way that we want to start about the idea is to say, okay, how can this work? How can we take the $7.6 million of annual revenue and put it onto these type of projects using these type of instruments? So the first one would be on the coordinated high school equalization. What we can do is take about $1 million of that $7.6 million annual revenue stream. We can convert that into $14 million worth of project capacity by utilizing a 25-year instrument, a certificate of participation instrument. That again will be focusing on the coordinated high schools. I show you there some initial thoughts on that. Again, those are just pulling forward from the last focus of the campaign. So those are still definitely to be decided if we want to move forward with this. Second step then would be we could take a $2.5 million, just under $2.5 million, $2.4 million of that of this revenue stream again, and convert that into $20 million of projects for the remodeling, renovations of our current facilities. And I'm proposing to do that on a 10-year instrument. Any guess on why I would like a 10-year instrument on that? So basically what I would like to propose is that these type of investments in facilities are something that we would want to do every 10 years or so, right? And so if we target a 10-year strand, a 10-year instrument on this for that $20 million, we would be able to then go and do it again 10 years from then, which I think would be a good timeline. So this is the part where our bond underwriters are really getting excited, because again, this is our innovation and creativity that no one else has contemplated before. So the third item would be on a 2014 3A investment. We would have, you can tell that this is the plug number, because I like to work in round numbers until I get to a point where I can't. So in order to balance this out, this will be right now what I'm performing out. Again, very very preliminary. This can change all kinds of directions, but what I would say now is to have $1 million of annual resource available, in addition to what we're already talking about with the $3 million that we have currently in our 2014 3A. Okay, and then the last two would be in terms of buildings. Again, to contemplate a 25-year instrument there, which would take about $1.6 million each year to make a $23 million project to build 2 elementary buildings each for that type of thing. So that's kind of the pattern that this is kind of working out towards. It feels really, I'm really pleased and excited about this, because again, this is a totally different perspective. I think it's a very sophisticated program to try and again circle back to what we want to accomplish, is to do these many things without an overall increase to the tax rate, and really help all these different areas for us moving forward. So thoughts and questions on that?
All this to refinancing, basically.
Not exactly. Basically, what we would propose to take a question to the voters in the November 2016 election. That question would read something about, without an overall increase in tax rate, okay, would the community allow us to basically convert what has been bond levy into a mill levy, and allow them to continue their investment in the district, and allow us to accomplish new projects and these projects and these priorities with it. So it's not a refinancing. It's kind of taking one revenue source that has been the bond mill levy and convert it into a regular operating mill levy that we can do these things with.
I think it's brilliant, so I like it.
I think it's very financially responsible. It's pretty impressive. And I do like the shorter term of the money, because we less on the 10-year projects, because we have interest savings too.
We do.
Very
We do.
well done.
10-year money is about, right now it's about 150 basis points or 1.5% cheaper than 25-year money. The 25-year money is still affordable at around a 5% rate. So, but I like the both messages that has. As A, that saves some money on that, and B, it gives us the opportunity to come, to do that again, to have a plan to do that again in 10 years.
So what's your next step?
Well, my next step this step is to getting your input and to see whether you would like us to continue that process. Really, what I want to do next is really have a lot of conversations with staff around the district. Go to staff meetings, I need to, I want to take this through the DAC budget subcommittee and get their thoughts, and the MLO oversight committee, and really probably spend that I would say the next, towards the end until the end of January, maybe early February, going around and getting that type of input, because really I won't feel if we can't generate the support at that level, then it wouldn't really be worth pursuing as designed. We either have to say, okay, let's abandon it, or let's try and come up with something else. But really, my next step is to go there and engage them in that level, and then also start working, of course, with the chief officers and the community engagement group to see how we can take things out to the larger community as well.
I think that last piece of feedback is going to be critical to be able to forming, in the end, what can go on the ballot in terms of what's going to be something that people will accept or not. I mean, that's a part of what we learned last time, and I think we need that knowledge earlier in the process this time than we had it last time, because we were making changes right up until right before we put it on the ballot that were pretty substantive to the plan. And so if we can start getting some of that input early enough that we know what things are going to be the hiccups, so that we can make sure our messaging then matches what we really think people are going to accept. I think that's important, which means we really need that community engagement piece as early as we can get it.
And that would definitely be the 1B priority. Again, I think the 1A priority is to talk to staff and see how they receive this and what their reaction is to it, and then immediately go into that community engagement portion, so that sometime by before the spring, even late winter, early spring, that we're bringing all of that kind of back to you and saying, okay, here's what we're hearing, and here's what we think does resonate, and here's what we want to avoid.
Brent, I'm also going to volunteer our student leadership group that are our liaisons. I think they have a better, thank you, I appreciate the effort. But I think they would truthfully have good insight on what the realities of our schools are, and to have their voices on the needs within the facilities would be golden for not only us as the board, but for the community to see what we really need. So I thank you for your willingness, and I think you'll be excited to do it.
I agree. I really would love the opportunity to come sit with that student leadership group and go through this whole thing again with them and get their feedback, their input, and their observations to it. So if that's something I could do in January as well, please sign me up.
So you'll put me on the no email, I guess. So you text me or however you guys do that. Okay? Yeah.
So any other questions or thoughts?
I'm thinking about what about an update in individual classrooms, computerized equipment, things like that. Things are changing all the time, and
Yep, and certainly,
a lot of this is facilities, but not really an update in our equipment. So
yeah, and so probably it's good to add some flavor to that too, because again, this number 2 priority about investments in the current facilities, those aren't things that I know. It's going to have to be. Jack's just gone through his evaluation of facilities. We'll be able to flavor with some of that, and then again talking to the principals and the zone leaders and say, what type of investment would you like to make, and you can see that how we have currently we have technology and the physical and aesthetic and functional as kind of the two sub points there. And so I could even see us having 2 pools of money, very similar to the way we've done the 2014 3A, where you had two pools of money. We can have 2 pools of money there. For instance, on the physical and aesthetic and functional improvements, I would like to be able to put a formula together that kind of considers the age and the size of the building, so it's weighted to those that are older and those that are bigger. In terms of giving them more opportunity for the remodeling and things that they might need, that the newer buildings might not need quite as much of that.
Will that include security of facilities and stuff like that?
It can, yeah. I haven't said anything that we couldn't do that. Really, that is still a priority of the original, of the 2014 3A monies that we have passed. So that's probably what I would suggest as kind of the initial source, as well as general fund operations. And so if things are left still on the table from that kind of perspective, I think it's definitely worth having this conversation as well. But those are the places I would suggest going first for those type of a question.
Okay, so any other questions? It sounds like the consensus is to move forward and continue to gather information about how this will be received, correct? Everyone? Okay. So you've got the direction to continue to move forward and explore it.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate you letting me squeeze this in on the last minute, and I appreciate Matt for getting it into the screen on the last minute. So as I thought that this was good stuff that you wanted to see.